Welcome to Trace Your Future with Refiloe, a brand new installment here on Trace Television, and I'm with Mona as well as Deboko from Young Aspiring Thinkers today, talking all things youth. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
When it comes to being a solution for African youth, you guys are at the forefront of this because you are doing what needs to be done in terms of bridging high school learners into industry. Tell us about Young Aspiring Thinkers, Mona.
Sure. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I would say it started out as a passion project, and now we're a purpose-led organization. It started out of the birth of confusion. When I started looking at what kinds of careers I wanted to get into, it was everything from wanting to be a soccer player to wanting to be a doctor to wanting to be a lawyer. And I think it stemmed from what my two older sisters were doing. So I have two older sisters. They are sort of my big inspirations in this life. One is a lawyer, one is a doctor. And I knew very early on that those were not careers that I wanted to get into.
Not at all.
Not at all. But it confused my parents, right? They were like, "Come on, we've got the trifecta going here. You need to just join the queue." But I think they really gave me the space to explore, and I'm really thankful for that in the journey. So I studied a BSc in microbiology at the University of Pretoria. Was supposed to be a scientist. I was supposed to be those guys wearing the hazmat suits, solving for viruses across the continent. Didn't do that. I joined a brewing company, which was quite interesting. Moved to KZN in a graduate program and was surprised at how many careers were out there that I had never heard of. And I started to ask myself, is this a problem that is unique to me, or is it unique to people across the country and the globe? And I think what we found early on is that people need career development, people need career guidance, and I think sort of our value proposition is merging what a young professional looks like together with what a high school student is looking for. So that's how it started, and I think it's been a crazy journey since 2019.
Interesting that you took your journey, right? And you thought, okay, there are many other Monewas that are faced with limited choices. So to grow their scope, what sort of things do you do in the high school to make them understand about this wide variety of careers available?
Well, we have a couple of programs and initiatives that we do with high schools in Gauteng. So we have what we call a Career Expo, and that's where you came about. We have young professionals, and intentionally so bring young professionals into the high schools to expose learners to as many careers as possible. So the aim is to close the gap that Mona was actually going through, what I went through, what each and all of us all share, which is the lack of enough information in order to make valid and constructive decisions for your entire life, right? So we have Career Expos where we bring mentors. We also have programs such as the Green Light program. It's a career development program that happens for 10 weeks. And in those 10 weeks, we expose learners to understanding themselves. So the holistic individual, because we know that in previously disadvantaged schools, there's no conversation surrounding who you are, what makes up who you are. So we start from that, and then we build up to what career you want to get into and what that journey looks like. So from the time in grade 10 to subject choices, to high schools, what you do, what activities you should do, what you should participate in, extracurricular activities, as well as into varsity, venturing into that, and as well as linking that to whatever career you do. So it's a full-on program that we do with the learners, and we also have an SDG entrepreneurship aspect, which I'm super excited about because it's our new baby. And that's where we also teach young learners how to become an entrepreneur. Not so much to become the entrepreneur, but to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Right? To be a problem solver, not for yourself, but even in your community. So those are the kind of programs that we have that we implement into the high schools in and around Gauteng.
I love the sound of that, purely because you guys are immersed in there. I guess my question is, how early in the high school career does it start? And what has been the response? Because I know it took me a long time to find my feet. Even after schooling, I was so lost for a long time. So now I'm a young person, and you are giving me all of this information, which is great. But I may not be at the maturity level to make it stick. So how early into the schooling do you go? And do you stay with the learner throughout?
So we start with grade 9. So the issue starts in grade 9, right?
Yeah, when you have to do subject choices.
Subject choices, because what we do find is when we do have in-person conversations with our grade 9 learners, they have no idea what they want to do, right? Because they haven't had that conversation with their parents. They haven't had that conversations with themselves, right? You do get confused, and you're expected to actually know, understand what you want to do at the age of what? You're very young, you know. So what we do is we start our intervention in grade 9, and then we move forward to grade 11, 10, 11, and 12. We don't fully have the capacity to go with them from grade 9 to grade 12, but we do ensure that our programs are effective enough for them to actually take that information in and then implement it within their lives. We do involve parents, we do involve teachers, we involve all the stakeholders and engage with them, because it's important. Like, it's one thing to only speak to the learner.
One conversation.
It's one
and then
conversation.
When they get home,
they have to explain to their parents, and it's difficult, right? So we make sure that the information moves from the learner to the parent, from the learner to the teacher, so that you build an ecosystem that really understands our product as well as the solution that we want to implement within the school and the ecosystem itself.
Yeah, sounds quite involved. And Mona, I guess my question to you is, what then is the response from the learner as well as the parents, that they are looking for this child to be the one that changes the circumstances around maybe the family. So you will become a doctor. We come from many of those homes where the hopes and the burden of the hope falls on us. So what then is the response from the learners as well as the parents and teachers?
Yeah, I think I'll start by answering that question from almost what the vision of YET is. So I mean, we talk about connecting bright young minds to careers, and I think the book was touching on a very important point, that we look at it from the beginning of this ecosystem all the way up until sort of they're active in the economy. And I think that's really the long-term view that we've taken as an organization. I think to come in with an intervention that lasts for one day, you leave the next year, I don't think it's sustainable. And I think what has been our sort of accelerator in this ecosystem is that we've been able to bring different partners together. So I think we don't pretend to be specialists in anything. To be honest, we'll bring in the psychologists to do the psychometric test. We'll bring in, the budding entrepreneurs. We'll bring in the corporates that need to add these interventions. So I think my discussions with, sort of school teachers, parents, corporates is, we need to look at this long term. And when we talk about unlocking a learner's potential in the career of their choice, that's actually what we're trying to do on a daily basis. And I think we get stuck with the idea of youth unemployment, but it's almost a lagging indicator. There are so many input feeders that actually affect that, and we've made the decision to look at that as what can we do at high school, and it's essentially creating that pipeline for learners to get into post-matric institutions. And I think that's where the conversation starts, right? Because there's vocational institutions, there's your traditional institutions, there's people who want to be entrepreneurs immediately out of high school, and I think we need to find all streams as acceptable. I think what we've seen is, there's the UCTs of the world, which are great, but not all the learners are going to go through that channel. And if you look at the FMCG sector, for example, it's run by people who come from vocational careers and are doing well for their families, are economically active, and I think that's the discussion we would like to have. And I think sort of the back end of the ecosystem is that we've been running for the past 4 years now. The reality is that we have high school students who've now transitioned into tertiary institutions.
Yes.
How do we then create a platform for them to actually be active in the economy? So one of the ways we're trying to do that is all the courses that we run are actually led by student facilitators. So we will hire students from the surrounding institutions to come in as project managers, to come in as business facilitators, because to get that work experience early on is absolutely vital. So if I give you almost 2 stats that keep me up at night 24/7, to be honest, is there's the percentage of a grade 9 learner that has met a young professional in a career of their choice is about 20% that we've seen in our survey. So you're asking a grade 9 learner to make a decision on their future career in terms of what subject choices they need to make, but they really haven't interacted with what a doctor is, what a soccer player does at a practical level. And I think that's where our career exposure elements come in. If you look at the percentage of students across the world, whether it's locally and globally, how many of them actually have had work experience before they complete their studies? And locally, it's about 20 to 30%. Even globally, it doesn't breach 50. So I mean, we need to change the narrative around what work experience looks like. I mean, I think we've made the decision that tertiary students are fully capable. They are able to effect business outcomes, and we've seen that success this year and the past 4 years that we've been running. So yeah, I think it's looking at the ecosystem end to end, and being honest and really challenging the status quo.
Yeah, I find the stats also quite alarming, right? Because also, what age are you at that time? You are like 16, and that subject choice is one of the most important decisions that you're about to make. And without ever having seen, the person in industry, it's quite jarring in contrast. That's why I guess from a position of Trace, the academia app, it really places in your hand what you would like the learner to see. So you have all of these courses that are interactive, and you have like an insight into what could be in your career, because the experts give that face of somebody who's already doing that job, and you almost have some sort of relation, but not to the extent where you are able to make the decision yourself. What other initiatives are missing in the ecosystem itself, from school into industry, to really support the youth in terms of making sound and informed decisions with their career choices?
Yeah.
I think our ecosystem is very disjointed. So parents, as well as teachers, as well as financial institutions, each and every individual organization or institution that can actually play a part, was so far removed from each other. And you can see even in our conversations and discussions with these stakeholders that we're not having the same conversation about this one individual that we're all going to benefit from. Because this grade 9 learner is going to benefit their parents, right? The future generation. They're going to benefit the corporate that should be participating in the financial future of this learner. They're going to be benefiting the overall economy of South Africa. They're going to be benefit you know what I mean? So it's a long journey that we're not mapping out, and then we're not even involving all stakeholders to be a part of. So I think the first step is to ensure that we're having valid conversations with each other. Let's have valid conversations and honest conversations. Let's break down this 74.4% unemployment stat. What does that look like? How can each and every stakeholder get involved, and in what capacity, to ensure that this person becomes a viable positive economic contributor within their social ecosystem and. So I think we're so far removed from each other. We need to get to a point where we have solid conversations with each other, work much more closer with each other, and I think that way we'll share the same information and we'll share the same sentiments, and realize that in as much as your output or your outcome or the bottom line of your organization looks different, we still have to invest into this one individual to ensure that all of our bottom lines are met, right? So it's about a conversation.
Good common interests.
We have common interests. I think in our discussions and our conversations, we really have to be honest with one another and realize that we actually do need each other, not just for us, but even for the overall economic growth of the country.
I guess that goes back to what I asked Mona earlier about the response, because what I find you guys doing is quite admirable. But are enough schools open to programs like that will expose, number one, perhaps the lack of their cultural programs or career kind of programs in the schools? I mean, we can never do enough, like what you're saying. We all continually need to do that. But are you getting quite the support and the reception that you need as an organization? And what more can be done, Mona?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, I hate to be the numbers guy. There's 26,000 schools in South Africa. 23,000 of them are public schools. The remainder is private. And I mean, we are only at 5 schools. So you can see the problem is massive. And I think the response has been good, I must be honest. I mean, if I look at our corporate partner, one of the big tech companies in the world, and we've been working with them for the past 4 years, but I think what I appreciate about that partnership is that it's been driven by data. So when we started the program with them in 2019, it started at the matric level, and we had to have those honest conversations, like the book was mentioning, that if you start the intervention at a matric level, it's just too late. That's the reality. And I think our surveys, data insights, we're able to show that at a practical level. And I think now that we moved the program to earlier, we've been able to effect the bursary outcomes for those learners. The pass rates in the schools have improved. So I mean, that's the things that we should be doing.
That's something tangible that you can
tangible.
Now.
And I think those things need to be contracted. I don't think those items happen naturally. You have to sit down and say, this intervention starts at grade 9. What are the outputs that we need 4 years later? We want to see an increase in bursary outcomes. We want to see an increase in learners who are active in institutions post-matric, because the reality is we have 3.5 million youth who are not involved in any form of education, employment, or training. And I think it's worrying, but there's serious organizations out there that are willing to look at the narrative differently. So if I look at our partners, I think even life changed for us when we got invited into an accelerator in France, where we went in 2020. So we were selected as one of sort of the innovative South African social impact solutions. And I think when we went to France in 2020, we went again in 2021, and we went again last year. It was unique because you start to realize that the way we are solutioning in Africa is no different to our counterparts across the globe. I just think where we are in terms of the problem-solving chain, we're at different stages,
Yes,
but
of course.
capability-wise, equal for my lens. I think the difference though is that bringing in the partners, like the was saying, is who are the partners that will take care of catering. So if you look at our programs, I mean, we have an opportunity to invest in a small business who can handle the catering and the programs that we run at the high school. We have an opportunity to invest in psychologists who have studied and are specialists in their field to come and handle the psychometric test, as opposed to us trying to do it ourselves. And I think that has been the driver, because we start to see that our own investment in our own programs has that sort of knock-on effect in the economy as well. So I think the response has been great, not fast enough.
Yeah,
you can never have.
You're only one organization. Unlike the 3.5 million youth, and you're only speaking about this country, right? Which is another conversation, because not all of them are going to be employed in this country. I mean, if your program is what it is, you're giving these learners an opportunity to go abroad as well. Some of them have never even thought of that. So there is that preparation also mindset-wise to say, you know, the world is not only in South Africa. What can you say to just those learners that are watching, and you know their hope is just to get to a place where the opportunities exceed, you know, their circumstances?
I think the opportunities are there.
Yeah.
I don't even want to lie, the opportunities are there. We just need to make sure that these learners get the information. They don't know where to find these opportunities, right? And if we do have that information, why can't we go to schools and let them know that, oh, this is an opportunity that exists? And there are platforms online like Trace Academia. It's free. It's free. Like,
It's
fun.
it's not a data
Well,
issue.
yeah.
There's no data issue. You can't lie here. You know what I mean? So there are certain instances wherein we can blame things like data, lack of financial support, and but there are programs as well as initiatives that exist. So we have to make sure that this information gets translated and given to the learners. And it's unfortunate that our education system doesn't have the capacity to do extra. So that's why we're here, right? But we also need the capacity, we need the space to operate. We need you to believe in our vision. We need you to do this, because if you don't do this, then the learners won't even know. They won't even interact with students from a business school in Spain.
Yes.
It's such a far-fetched or far-removed idea, but we do make sure that that actually happens to show that there's proximity to the vision. That it's so close. It's so close. It's so tangible. It's possible. Because we also make sure that we live that dream, right? We make sure that we also interact with other organizations in and out of South Africa, out of the continent, so that we can bring this kind of information into the lives of the learners to show that there's really close proximity. So it's possible. It's really possible. Just make sure that you take the initiative. You have to take the initiative. I know for a fact I could have possibly taken the initiative a bit more when I was younger. And also my friends, you know, friends. You know, friends. You need to make sure. You have to make sure that you surround yourself with the right people. It's so important at such a young age, so that you can push each other. Rather, I compete with you in making sure that we get out of the country. And I go to a huge institution in the US, and you go to the UK, and we make things happen. And we come back and implement whatever we did learn into our country, and make sure that it's a competitive enough country to actually make changes in the global space. So I can't emphasize how much it's possible. It's extremely possible. You just have to take the initiative.
I think listening to you, I see it, I believe it, and I buy into it, which is why, Mona, my next question is, what can be done to support an organization like YAT some more? And also, how do people get in touch? Because I think after this conversation, there are a lot more people who will be interested in plugging into your ecosystem and what you are already doing, as well as maybe who are parents who want their learners on this program.
So I think I'll start by explaining sort of YAT services. So it's really heavily dependent on our purpose, which is connecting bright young minds to careers and unlocking that potential in a career of your choice. So we almost look at our services threefold. There's the career exposure, there's the green light program, and there's the work experience and internship opportunities. And I'll touch on almost a case study that I think we can be proud of for each. So I think the career exposure elements is heavily reliant on young professionals out there who have expertise across various industries. And the point of that is to, give a learner an insight into what is your career about, what do you enjoy, what are some of the lessons you've learned in your journey. And I think those career exposure elements are for the learner who's always known that they wanted to be a chef since the age of 4, or a doctor who is clear with the path and how they want to channel that, or the guy who's still figuring things out. And I think some interesting use cases that we've seen in the past is, we've had career exposure elements with Refiloe Foundation that we partnered with last year. That was amazing because I think they're doing things quite well in that space. Our second program is the Green Light program, and that's ultimately to create a pipeline of learners into either your traditional institutions, your vocational institutions, and the new emerging career. So we've got that program running at one of the schools in Galfontein here in South Africa, and I think that's a program that we want to scale, not only across the country but across the continent. So I think an example of that is one of the components of the Green Light program that Debbie touched on was SDG entrepreneurship. So we partnered with a business school in Germany, Munster School of Business. They've been one of our partners for the past 3-4 years. Super insightful because they've given us a lens of how do we take a learner who's in high school in Oliver Bosch and give them access to a global audience. And ultimately those learners were able to get a social innovation certificate, and with the intention of pitching that business idea to a corporate. So that's an example of how we've merged sort of the local and global presence. I think the fourth aspect of internships and work experience has probably been the most successful from a reach point of view. So all the corporate organizations that we partner with, we hire tertiary students to come in, like I mentioned earlier, as project managers, as business improvement leads. And I mean, we've been able to inject quite a significant amount of funding into the universities to actually pay them. I think we pay 10-12 times higher than minimum wage. So I think that's important because it's when we want the students to have that pocket money, but also be active in the economy. I think that's the broader solution here.
Because that's what they are hungry for.
That's what they're hungry for.
You start feeling like I'm broke, pay taxes
and I think the bigger play there is also to show tertiary institutions across the country and the world that the practical application of what you're studying is far more important than
the theory.
The theory. And I think that's what we've been able to see quite well in the program. At a global level, we've had students from Cornell University in the States, we've had McGill University in Canada, we've had master students from IE Business School in Spain, and I think the importance is that the two worlds collide. So you will have an MBA student from IE Business School in Spain who will come to South Africa and work in our organization for 4 to 6 weeks. They get to learn, they get to work with leaders like Tebogo in the organization, but they are solving for the same solutions we have in business. So it's not an internship where you feel you're not contributing to the goals of the organization. The project scope is dependent on you delivering it, and I think that's almost where different corporates or different institutions can get involved. It's either at the career exposure level, either at tertiary or at a high school level. It's at the Green Light program to help us scale this across the continent and across the world, and really then using the internships and the work opportunities that we have use cases for across the world and the continent to scale that. So yeah, I mean, I have this ambitious ambition of connecting 1 billion bright young minds to career. So that's my Everest.
I think you are at the right place.
Yeah,
right? Because we share the goal. That's what Trace Academia wants to do, and create 1 million jobs, I think, over the African continent. And this is all through I mean, I've touched a little bit on the app, but it's about being a self-starter, right? And not waiting for that opportunity. With the current circumstances that you've got, you can just take this app and let it bridge you from where you are to where you are wanting to go. And I think listening to you guys, you give me a sense of that you are driven to want to see these learners on the other side. And for me, it's what's also key in this is that you guys are young people yourselves, because I know we are having this conversation here, but they're going to look at you and think, why do you guys sound as though you're 50 already? Because of the knowledge that you've got and the passion that's driving this. And I have to ask, being a youth that's solutioning for the youth, where do you get that passion to do that for? I know you spoke about your individual journeys and how you also wanted to see this person, but you could have done that and then felt, okay, I've at least given back a certain amount of hours, or for 4 years I've done something. But the burden of this responsibility to want to keep on going, where does that come from?
With me,
Where does it come from?
hi mates, I was born with this, you know.
Born this way, no?
I was born this way.
Yeah.
I think because of the level of exposure that I've had when I was young, for a long time, I've always been ambitious. I've always tackled things head on, and if there's just this tiny little opening, let's go, we'll figure it out, you know. And the way in which I was raised, my mom has always been passionate about youth development, so I was raised in and around that space. And I think her and I are very similar in that. And my mom's still involved in our youth development programs. Like,
awesome, right?
she can't, ask me now, she can't not be involved.
Big supporter.
She can't not be involved, you know. And because of the kind of environment that I was brought up in, I can't let that only end with me. I have to also continue it with my little brother. I have to continue it with the young learners that I interact with.
For me,
the community, because it's a ripple effect. You affect me, you affect my brother, you affect the learners that I interact with. They get affected, they spread it. It's very simple. It's a simple procedure or process that actually takes place, that we don't see the impact of that ripple effect. So if it happens to me, it has to happen to the people around me. Otherwise, then what impact am I leaving in this world, right? So for me, it's about how I was raised.
Yeah, and if you could just conclude for us and young aspiring thinkers, an organization that's by the youth and it's for the youth, advocating for their educational liberation, so to speak. And what's next for a foundation, for an organization like yours, and where to from all the beautiful work that you've done that we absolutely admire, by the way. I think I'm sitting here and I'm beaming with pride because I can touch you, I can talk to you, and you guys are really at the heart of being the solution. And I can only wish your organization well and look forward to what's about to come, which is
So I mean, I if I look at my studies, I've gone from a science degree to business, and now I'm back in the tech space. So I've been lucky enough to be accepted at NYU, and I'm doing a master's in business analytics. So I think what is next, I think, is really being a data-driven analytical organization, and I think building a lot of platforms that can give access to people across the continent, across the world. I think that's what we are driving in our strategy at Yet, and I think growing the amount of people who are active in the economy. I think almost what's embedded in the organization as a base is we want to drive decent work and economic growth, and that's what keeps us alive. So yeah, connecting bright young minds to careers is always at the foundation, is what we'll keep driving.
And other organizations that are looking to be mentored by Yet, is that a possibility to come?
I think it's a possibility.
Yeah.
We're very into partnering with other organizations, because you can't cut the cake. You can't eat alone.
Of course.
You can't eat alone.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You
full,
can't eat alone.
Yeah.
So we're very open for organizations to come through and speak to us, and so that we can solve the broader. It's a big problem
It is.
that we need to solve, and we can't solve it by ourselves.
So we've already started with Gibbs lectures, which is interesting.
I mean,
partnering,
listening,
exactly.
we're listening out.
Partnering with organizations such as Gibbs, who actually believe in your vision. It's important to realize that it's a huge organization. I mean, it's like number one in the continent, right? And for them to actually believe in our vision, and to also then take that same kind of belief or just tangible belief to other organizations, our level as well as below, or even greater. It's important for us. So like I'm saying, we need to get the ecosystem to get together and be a tight, close knit, so that we can actually make sure that we solve for the broader issue.
That's heavy, because I was watching a different speaker in one of the podcasts, and they were saying, like, I think the faster entrepreneurs can be more honest with each other, I think we learn a lot faster. So like, I mean, when we do our guest lectures at Gibbs, we are so honest with maybe things that we shouldn't be talking about. Like, I mean, it's been the struggle of, you have to have the governance structures in place, you have to have a board, you have to have the annual financial statements in check, because you can't manage money if you don't have your ducks in a row. So I mean, I think even maybe sort of the back end things that people don't see, I think are things that we can also be proud about. We've got board members all over the world, people who are SMEs in their space, and I think these are people who know more than us. That's the honest truth. Who are also guiding and shaping where the organization's going. So I think being able to just acknowledge that you exist in a much broader ecosystem, I think, is key. It's key.
Proud of you. Thank you very much for your time. I think all of us have learned and taken a leaf out of what Young Aspiring Thinkers is all about, and we're looking forward to more.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you so
for
much.
joining us for this week's installment of Trace Your Future with Refiloe. Do make sure that you download that Trace Academia app and learn unlimited, free, and fun learning.